Recording? Okay. Good morning, everyone. We're on Facebook Live now and looking forward to 3 hours of Judith and I talking.
For a half hour anyway. And then we look forward to talking with our Zoom participants
Right.
after that. Our topic today is from mystery to mastery, because I think a lot of us would agree that what is going on in our world right now, it seems like a big mystery to many of us. It's like, what? How in the world did all this happen at once? uh, with all the issues with global warming, with storming, with the pandemic, and all of the fear and fear for our loved ones that engenders. What else? Can't go out of our house as much, so like the social distancing is isolating us from social support that we usually have.
Yeah, and you find out ice cream has calories. I mean, who knew? Who knew? Yeah.
Supposed to stock up on food,
Yeah. And then
which foods.
if you eat all day long, you will gain weight. I had no idea. I didn't know that. You know.
What else? Oh, yes. Then all the social unrest that's going on.
There is that.
So
Yeah.
we can look around and go, oh my gosh, what is going on? It's like a mystery. How did this all happen all at once? And of course, it didn't happen all at once. But what Bob and I've been looking at is how do we take this to mastery? How do we rise above the level of fear and oh my God, ain't it awful? And we found a reading from Ernest Holmes that was actually yesterday's in his 365 that seems to address this. I'm going to see if you agree. The Bible quote is one you're probably familiar with in 1 Corinthians 13. And I'm sure this is Apostle Paul speaking. It says, "For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part shall be done away." And Ernest Holmes says how true it is that we do see as through a glass darkly, or only in part, meaning we can only understand in part what's going on right now in our world. But to all of us, there come some fleeting moments when our inward vision is opened and we seem to look out upon a newer and broader horizon. The apostle tells us that, quote, when that which is perfect shall come, then that which is in part shall be done away. What he's really saying is that we are all at a certain place in our evolution, but that there is a complete certainty before us. We shall continuously expand and experience more and more of that life that is already perfect. But there's no reason why this awakening should not come now. For we're not really waiting on God. God is waiting on us. Behold, I stand at the door and knock, quote unquote. All nature waits our recognition, and even the divine spirit must wait on our cooperation with it. So then he says this affirmative prayer. Please say this along with me to yourself. Today, my eyes are open more widely, and I look out upon a broader horizon. Across all the experiences I may have had that were limited or unpleasant, I now see the rosy hue of a new dawn. Letting go of that which is little, I now enter into a larger concept of life. Dropping all fear, I entertain faith. Realizing that every form of uncertainty is seeing only in part, I open my spiritual eyes to that which is wholeness. And even as I do this, the limitation, the fear, and the doubt slip away from my experience, taking their departure in quietness and in peace, as I turn to that which is greater and better and fuller of eternal life, of happiness, and of peace. Today, my eyes are open to the breadth and the height and the depth of life that is God. life that is good, and a law that is perfect. And so it is.
Beautiful and clear. When Judith and I were talking this morning about what our talk was going to be, and I went and got a cup of coffee, and as I was getting the cup of coffee, I saw the phoenix rising, and I heard if there were no ashes, there would be no phoenix. And the phoenix exists as a result of everything that has to be set on fire, everything that has to be ignited, everything that is old and finished has to be complete. And in the burn and in the fire, out of that comes what is necessary. Out of that comes what is possible. Out of that comes the phoenix. And I thought we need to think more about that this is a time that the phoenix is rising, and that the heat that we're feeling right now in every area, whether it be the physical heat we're feeling from the temperature of the globe that's gone up, is the resistance to change that we're now dealing with, that we're going to have to deal with. And that this resistance eventually gets to a boiling point or eventually ignites. And one of the points I want to make about that is that when there is that ignition and when there is that fire, anything near it can also catch fire. And it's easy to pay attention to all the little fires around it and say, this isn't fair, this isn't right. But what we need to pay attention to is that the fire that we're seeing is beliefs, old ideas having been ignited, and will have to burn for new ones to take place, for the new life that we want to experience to unfold and to be possible. And so there's no way around it. We have to go through this, and we are going through this.
So, for example, we were talking about all the resistance to positive change that's been happening in our society. There's been resistance to reforming a lot of things in our government, resistance to reforming healthcare, and that resistance actually just becomes the what do you call it when you're making a fire? Kindling.
Kindling, yeah.
It becomes the kindling. It won't. The resistance to change, resistance that causes friction, and eventually it erupts in flames. And we see that as what's happening in our society today, that change that's been needed and change that we believe is inevitable has been resisted. And so now there's eruption, there's the setting on fire. And out of that fire will come a new world, a better world. We will get the changes that we see. And it doesn't necessarily happen easily or prettily. Or without some of that resistance. But if we can see that as a good thing instead of, oh my God, what's happening? This is terrible. If we can stay out of the ain't it awful and just keep our vision. One of my mentors used to say, keep your eye on the peach and the tree. Keep your eye on what you want to see happening. Keep knowing that that is unfolding, and it may unfold a little bumpily. But if we as metaphysicians keep seeing what we want to see happen in the world, we help that unfold. And so it's incumbent upon us to try to see clearly, not to see through that glass darkly, to stay above the ain't it awful, to connect with source and connect with love of the universe and send that love out to all human beings that are struggling and suffering and making the change happen. And try even to stay out of it with our own families, which can be a challenge. But you have to be, sometimes you have to be the lighthouse. Mm-hmm. You have to be the lighthouse, shining that beacon out there and staying solid. It's wonderful when you start seeing some of the results of that resolve, which I have this week, thank God, with my own family.
This week I've signed, it was a gift actually from my son, who's made us a great gift of the Master Series. And so I was tuning into that, and one of the persons speaking was Robin Roberts, I believe her name is. No. And she is an ABC anchor who, and she was talking about something really very powerful. She was saying Her mom told her when she was going through cancer to turn mess into message, mess into your message. And I thought, oh, that's an interesting idea. And I gave more thought to it, and she's given thought to it too, which is that the mess is disorganized and confusing until you learn from it what you need to learn. When you've learned what you need to learn, then it's time for you to share it and to make a difference. To be able to move from mess to contribution, to be able to move from mess to gift. And so the gift really is the mess, because it awakens us to our true nature, to who we are, to what's important to us. For Robin, it awoke her to what was going on in her life and what had value, and all of the things that didn't have value, the things that needed to be let go of. And so this is a time right now too when we're really getting a chance to look at what has value, what has meaning to us, what do we need to get rid of. But the important message in that is to look at the mess and ask ourselves, what is it that is teaching us about ourselves and about our world that could help us have a better world and have a better life, rather than, oh my God, I can't believe this mess, I can't take this anymore. And I've had a number of people tell me, because I do a lot of coaching, I can't deal with this anymore, I can't take this anymore. And the sad thing about that statement is it blocks you from being able to look further, but it doesn't end the chaos, it doesn't end the mess, it doesn't put out the fire. If you're standing in front of a fire and you say, I can't take this anymore, as long as you're standing there, you will. But what it does is it immobilizes you from being able to say, do I need to get back from the fire? Do I need to get an extinguisher? What would be my course of action? So this is a time too, when we look at the mess and say to ourselves, there's something I need to do here. And what is it I need to do, rather than I can't. I can't is not a word that works in the middle of this chaos and in the middle of this mess. I can and I will and I must prevail, because we're going to prevail unless we don't. So unless you die, you're actually going to be in the middle of this thing, whether you say I can't or I can. And that's an important piece. Robin didn't say, well, I can't take this cancer anymore, so it's enough already.
My life and career are over.
Yeah, right. She said, it is what it is, and if I'm still here, I'm going to do something about it. She didn't say, I can't take it anymore, I can't. And the problem with that interrupt is that interrupts any course of thinking or action that might be in favor of you. So when Unrest talks about seeing the world not darkly, but seeing the world through light, seeing the world with light clearly, he's saying, set aside I can't, and say, not only I must, I will, but I can. And if I can, that conversation alone changes everything. And the forest fighters, firefighters, when the fire gets close, what's amazing is they don't run away. They start what's called a backfire. They start another fire in the direction they want the fire to go, to clear everything that needs to be cleared before the fire that seems to be out of control reaches them. They don't say, well, I just can't do this anymore, it's too hot.
Right, that reminds me of, we watched a movie, an old movie, I think, about these brothers who seemed to be invincible, no matter what happened, no matter how many times they were taken down, they seemed to always come back. And one developed a reputation of being actually immortal because it seemed like nobody could kill him. And so he was having a discussion with his younger brother, and he says, so what makes us different? What makes us invincible? And his younger brother was saying something about, well, being fearless. And he said, no. No, we have the fear. The fear is an essential part. That does not distinguish us from others. The difference is how far we are willing to go while experiencing the fear. It's like have the fear and do it anyway, kind of thing. And so I wanted to address that because sometimes we'll come up when we will have fear. This last week has been very scary for me. My sister has COVID. And I think what I did with that is I did move into a lot of action because she lives alone and there seemed to be a lot of coordinating that we needed to do to try to get her the help she needed, and a lot of communicating with a lot of other people. And she finally was hospitalized Thursday, um, through no help from us. And actually, she got that through friends. But once she was hospitalized, then I could totally relax because there was nothing more for me to do. And but I noticed that then when I relaxed, when I moved out of action, I really started feeling the feelings, the emotions of it, you know. And while it wasn't fun because I really thought that she was going downhill pretty quickly. I mean, I didn't think that. I knew that. I saw that. But I wouldn't want to not have my feelings. You know, we need to really have the experience complete. We need to have our feelings, even the painful ones, even the sad ones, even the ones of loss. And while we don't want to be like a ball that's tossed around depending on circumstances, you wouldn't really be going through it if you didn't have the feelings. So by the end of the day yesterday, she called us and she had really turned around and was doing great. And my feelings were then elated. I went from yesterday morning feeling like a part of me was dying to feeling elated in the evening. Still, that's all part of the process.
What's important from what I take away from what you're saying that's important for me is that not to live our lives trying to regulate the feeling, but allowing the feelings to be the feelings they are, and try to regulate the thinking and the action. Some of us, when we get stressed, are simply working on what can I do to regulate the feeling tone. It could be an eating, it could be a drink, it could be running, it could be anything to regulate the feeling. The feelings will come and they will go, but what's really important for us is to regulate the behavior, and the feelings will follow. And an example of that would be that I've talked to somebody recently and I said, why don't you meditate? I can't meditate, I'm too upset. And I said, well, actually, that's probably the best time to meditate is when you're upset. You see, I can only meditate when I feel good. Oh, so what's regulating you is whatever feeling state you're in at any particular point in time, and any thinking or that's just out of the question. She said, well, exactly. Don't you know that? You know, it's all about how you feel. It isn't all about how you feel. It's really more than that. And if we want to have the feeling tone be the feeling tone we can enjoy, we have to set up the mental state that we can enter into that will encourage and empower us to have those feelings. We regulate them. And so I think it's really important right now to notice that we can't let the tail wag the dog, that we have to allow our feelings to be and to recognize them and then change our behavior so that the conditions are better for us to be in, but not to get a better feeling, but to get a better result, to get a better life. So whenever we're being run by, like I said earlier, I can't do this anymore, that's a response to a feeling state. It's not a response to the condition. And what can I do? How can I be with that condition? And so this is really a time for us. It's a very important time for us to be mindful, literally mindful. And if we're not mindful, we're mostly in our reactive state. And when we're in our reactive state, it's not very useful. It's not very constructive.
Right. And so a mystery is when we don't understand what's going on. That's a mystery. And so a lot of what's happening, you know, we get asked those hard questions like the why questions. And I've always found those not to be helpful at all. Why doesn't work, nor does why me. Uh, the how questions, the how questions are better. How can I deal with this? How can I go through this? How can I supersede it? How can I help? Um, those are good questions. And those are good questions to ask of spirit. Because I do think that action, the length to which we're willing to go, is very important to be of assistance, to take care of ourselves, to bring about the change we want to see in the world. But a lot of it is being that lighthouse, that beacon, and just that steady beacon of light, knowing that all things unfold for our highest good. All things unfold for the highest good of humanity.
You know, the why is a really good question to ask when everything is done and you want to collect the data to figure out what could I do, what could I have done differently, what could I do differently the next time. But the why really is another way of saying, I can't deal with this right now. It's a more subtle version of it, but stop. I can't deal with this. You're going to have to tell me why this is happening because I can't go any further. And the truth is, not only can you will. And that's just an interrupt. It's a kind of mental tantrum. I can't take this the way it's happening anymore. You're going to have to tell me why this is happening.
Well, A Course in Miracles says that we all give everything all the meaning that it has.
Yeah.
And we are meaning makers as human beings. We like things to have meaning. And so I suggest you give it a meaning that supports and uplifts you, not one that beats you down. For example, you could give it the meaning, and many fundamentalists do, God is punishing us. This means God is punishing us. I think that's a really old-fashioned way of looking at what happens in the world. And there's never any evidence about that because bad things are always happening and good things are always happening. So it all depends on the meaning that you give it.
I'm always impressed with that when a plane crashes and one person survives, that God saved me. What was he thinking about the other 280 people on the plane? I don't know that God actually said, I want that one, but I'm sorry, the other 279 aren't going to make it. But we tend to do that. We tend to make what happens to us, that's where we survive, we give meaning to it. That you could give meaning to it like that, but it's really us giving meaning to something rather than what it actually means.
Right. So I choose to look at this like this is a step, excuse me, this is a step in mastery.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's what we're all wanting to evolve into. And we would want to do it through love. I'm looking at Jeffrey and smiling. We would want to evolve in love and into our mastery. And so that means we have to really keep up our spiritual practices. We're all human beings. I really have to keep up my spiritual reading, my meditation classes reading, because otherwise I can get weighed down bit by bit with the events of the world and the events of the day. So,
I just had a flash of an old movie that I saw, an old war movie. And in this old war movie, there's combat everywhere. The enemy's got all kinds of guns. The enemy has outgunned them by, I can't believe how much and how dangerous this is. And the sergeant says to the troops, there's only one thing you really need to do here. What's that? Duck and cover, get more ammunition. No. You need to keep your boots dry. Because what can kill you is walking around with wet feet in those wet boots. And eventually you won't be able to walk anymore and everything will be able to stop. And I would say that meditating is keeping your boots dry. Mm-hmm. That we need spiritual practices so that we can continue to walk. We can continue to take another step. You think the enemy is somebody shooting at you. The enemy is, I can't walk anymore because I stopped doing the things that take care of me, that allow me to take the next step, to make the next move. And so a little mantra that I will have probably for the rest of this week is every time I get upset, I'll say, keep your boots dry.
Well, and I think another one I'll be saying is It's a Mystery. Another one of our favorite movies is Shakespeare in Love.
I love that.
And the man who owns the theater, or who manages the theater where the Shakespearean plays are being put on, doesn't have the money to need to pay up front for the rent for the play to happen. And he's being accosted for the money. And he said, don't worry, we'll have the money. We'll have the money on time. And he's asked, how? How are you going to have the money? It's a mystery. He says, but it always seems to work out.
Well, yeah, and in that beautiful statement, it's a mystery. You can say that. It's a mystery, which gives you a chance to not say, I can't, or I don't. It's a mystery. It's a mystery. How are you going to survive this illness? I don't know, but I will. How do you know that? It's a mystery.
It's a mystery.
Yeah. I would much prefer if we could say, keep your boots dry, and it's a mystery. Then I can't, and you're going to have to explain why. Because if you can't tell me why this is happening, I won't go on. Well, what will you do instead? You'll freeze yourself and wait till it's over? I mean, the truth is you will go on. And so It's a Mystery is a great, great solution. And I think if we're willing to see life as a mystery and continue forward, we can head in the direction of mastery.
I agree. And another thing we discovered, because we both had some down days this week, and it was really helpful to have each other to talk to lift the other one up or to recognize the other one needed lifting. And I would really urge those of you, especially if you live alone, to reach out, call a friend. It does help to talk about things that are bothering you. Really, in psychology, it's called expressing, pushing out those feelings. And you do feel lighter after you push it out, after you talk about it, after you express it. And if you don't, you can become depressed. It can be, those feelings can be pushed down, and then you can feel depressed. So there's a lot of meaning in those words, express, depress, suppress, and it's very, very helpful to talk to someone. Even if it seems like you're just bleh, regurgitating your problems, you're going to feel better afterwards. So I really urge you to not stay alone, going in circles. If you're feeling down, reach out.
Judith was cooking some beans at some time back in a pressure cooker. What I noticed was that every now and then I would hear psst, and I said, "What's that?" I didn't have a pressure cooker in my life growing up. And she said, "That's the excess steam being released." And I said, "Is that safe?" And she said, "Yes, not only is it safe, it's necessary." It didn't change the temperature of the pot. It didn't stop the beans from cooking. But what it did do is it released the excess pressure so that the beans could continue to be cooked. We need to release the excess pressure so that the idea can be baked fully, so that we can actually have the end result we want. And I think sometimes what happens is I'm feeling that pressure. Oh my God, I've got to do something. Allow some of it, which is what you're saying, allow some of it to be released. And releasing that pressure doesn't change the course of action you need to take. It doesn't stop the beans from cooking. It simply means I'm willing to take a course of action and share how I'm feeling. When we did that, we talked about, there was probably not more than 10 or 11 things we were upset about, each of which needed about 3.5, 4 hours of conversation. And we spent probably 20 minutes, and at the end of it, we were laughing at how absurd much of the worry is. But the worry under pressure gets bigger than the thing itself. And that's what I think is really important, is that we not allow the pressure of the worry to become the worry. It's the releasing of that pressure that allows us, okay, I can worry about this, and I will, but I'll work on it, as opposed to, I can't deal with the pressure of the built-up worry that I've been storing, which is a tendency for us all to do. And then we explode, or we react, we put into motion the emotion and say things we wished we hadn't said, or don't even mean.
So in conclusion, let's look at this idea of mastery and what the heck does it mean? When I think of mastery, I think of Jesus, the great example. And, I think his knowing that he was already part of the divine, part of God, and that he could not be killed. I mean, his body could die, but he would not be killed. That gave him a sense of serenity that he could go through, even being crucified. Not that he didn't feel the pain, he felt the pain, but he could go through the experience with serenity, knowing that it was not the ultimate truth, was not the ultimate reality, that he knew, this day will I be in paradise. And he said to the two being crucified with him, this day shall I see you in paradise. So we need to know that paradise is what's real. Paradise is what is eternal. And we need to keep our eyes on that paradise so that we can bring that paradise to earth. I do believe that's what's coming. And it's a long, bumpy road. And we won't all live to see it. And, I don't have a goal or a deadline for when that will happen. I don't know if I'll see it, but I hope I'll be part of creating it here on earth. If we can just keep the love and keep the serenity and keep supporting one another and being the lighthouse that shines that light out, shines that knowing out to the world. We help create the mold. Ernest Holmes' favorite words, we create the mold that create that reality. Allow it to unfold. We can't sit around and say, ain't it awful, and be creating that mold. You know, we have to see it, we have to feel it, we have to know it, and see paradise here on earth.
Well done.
Thanks.
You know stuff. I got me one of the smart ones. Well, I think what Jesus is also, he's a great example, not the great exception, but he was a great example of being the solution, not being caught up in the problem. And when you see yourself as a solution in everything that you do, even when you don't understand how it's going to work out, you move very differently than when you think that maybe you're the problem or that the problem is stopping you from being part of the solution. We're all part of that solution, whether we know it or not. And whatever happens to any of us happens to all of us. We're all part of the same interconnected, wonderful weaving that is this planet. And so we can't be separate from it. We can't be separated from the solution. We can be separated from our belief that we are.
Would you like to close with a closing?
I sure will.
Affirmative
Yeah.
prayer.
So we call this affirmative prayer for those of you that are joining us that don't know much about us. So what we know together right here and right now is that we are connected at the most wonderful, deep, profound level. And that connection allows us to move as one in the direction of love and kindness and compassion and empathy. That being together as one allows us to move ever forward in the direction of bringing forth the greatest and most wonderful of all possibilities for all and for this life on the planet. We know that right here and right now, we are an expression, a divine expression of love in action. And we say yes to it. We say thank you for it. And we know that because it is so true, we can take great comfort in it. We can smile and find joy in it. And we do. And we say yes together. We say yes in the biggest and most grand way we've ever said yes to love and light and joy. And knowing that it is done in mind, it is done in heart, and it is done in the body of our experience. And knowing this, we say thank you, and together we say, and so it is.
Great. So I'm going to end the recording, and we look forward to those of you who stay on. We love chatting with you.